Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be making faux malachite balls out of cement. So what you're going to need is, I'm just using some spent oil and some sellotape, sticky tape, masking tape or whatever. Now I've got 3 different size balls. They're just little plastic balls that come like that. They hook together and you've got a beautiful sphere. So we've got them in 3 different sizes. So there's the large, medium, and then of course the small one. Then you need something to balance them in when you're trying to pour all your cement in so that they don't fall over. I like to use the cement that is a little bit of a runny consistency. It takes a little bit longer to dry, but it is still easier to work with. Just make sure that you've got no lumps in it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to oil the inside of the ball so that the cement does not get stuck to it. And then oil the inside. Oh, that's right. I also drilled a hole on the other side so that we can put the cement in. Wipe the bowl down because you can see a bit of oil comes out and then nothing's going to stick to that. So the next thing we're going to do now is to tape the ball shut. So now you just take your funnel while you're spooning it. Every now and then give it a tap so you can remove all the bubbles. Once it's full, just put it aside to dry. Every now and then just check on your balls, because as you see, what happens is the liquid sort of like comes to the top. So what you want to do now is you keep tapping them to get all the air out, and this liquid will start coming to the top. So all you have to do is just pour it out and you'll see it's quite clear. So that's the water that's coming out. And then just top it up again. The balls have been drying there for 24 hours, so now it's time to open them. Before you open them, I suggest that you take a bit of sandpaper and just sand the little bit of cement that comes through the hole where you've poured your cement through, just so that you can get it out a little bit easier, because they're really difficult to actually get out. So once it's a little bit smooth, it'll be a lot easier to get it out. Hopefully they're dry. So here goes. You're probably going to need a sharp knife or a chisel or something like that to be able to pry it open to actually get it out. Unfortunately mine is already cracked, so that one's going to come off rather easily. There you go, one off. So you see you've got a little knob there that you've got to sand down. Now the second piece should come off easily because I put quite a lot of oil in it. There we have it, our sphere. Just take a little bit of sandpaper and just sand the ridges to make it all smooth. Then it'll be time to paint them. Right, the ball is now dried completely. So now what we need to do is we need to paint the cement with a primer, or I use a flat paint which acts like a primer so that the paint doesn't just be absorbed into the cement. So we just give it a coat of primer. Just paint it. You've painted half, put it aside to dry, and then we'll be back. So now that your white is dry, now we're going to paint on a green. The green that I'm using, I've got 2 different brands. They're both called Hooker Green, but as you can see they're slightly different in colour, so I've just mixed the 2 of them to give me this really brilliant colour. Once again we set that aside to dry. So what you're going to need for your paints are 3 different shades of green. A light green, a medium coloured green, and a darker coloured green, and then you need some titanium white, Now that the paint is all dry, so what I have taken is some plastic bottles and I've cut them into fine strips. Each of them is different. You got really, really fine ones. You cut them to look like cones. So that's a really fine one. That's my number 1. Then you've got slightly smalls and bigs together. That's the number 2 pattern. Then you've got a little bit bigger and then the large one. So those are the tools that I use. And then you need some ordinary cardboard. This is just a piece of cardboard that I've broken off one of the biscuit boxes. Just tear it so that you've got a bit of a jagged edge. I thought I would show you what these little pieces of plastic that are cut out of a bottle make. So this one is using this tiny one. And then you get, in this section here, I've used the cardboard. Over here I've used the slightly larger one. And then in this section over here, I don't know if you can see, in this section here, I've used the really, really fine one. This one is the medium one that's got the different ones, which gives you that pattern. So as you can see, whichever one you choose to use, I've used a combination of them all, and you can see it gives you a really, really fabulous finish that really looks like malachite. So that's one example. This is another one. So this, and this one, which is also done with the cardboard in this section here. The very, very fine one over here, I've left sort of like that, just blank. And then on the side here, you can see there, I've just used a paintbrush to blend the colours together. So however you choose to make your malachite, it all depends on you. But I do find those little pieces of plastic really, really helpful to create these wonderful patterns. So I've just got 4 different paint brushes to dip into each paint colour that I'm using. I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so that you can actually see better as to what we're doing. Right, so first thing you want to do is just start applying your paint. Any random pattern is perfect. Lucky thing is with malachite, there's no right or wrong, because malachite has got so many different varieties and patterns. That's why it's my favourite stone. So, a little bit of blob of that light green, bit of the dark green. I kind of like these 2 colours, so I use them a little bit more than the really dark colour. The dark colour you need for the depth. So as you can see, I'm just using it very sparingly because it's not a very, very nice colour for me. But as I said, you need it for the depth. And just a smidgen of white. White is optional, because there's some people that don't actually like the whites in it, so I'm just putting a tiny bit of white on it. So the first one, we're going to take, actually no, we're going to take the number 2, because it's got a bit of a mixture. It's got a mixture of smalls and bigs together. And then all you're going to do is just move it in your paint to create patterns. Not giving me quite the pattern that I want, so I'm going to go with the cardboard. Unfortunately with the spheres they've got to be done in 2 movements, because you've got to wait for the paint to all dry. So that's pretty much what you're looking for. When I bring out this one a little bit closer and the camera closer, you can see to get more of the veiny effect. Then you have to put that aside and wait for it to dry. The paint is now dry. I'll just let you know though, the smaller ball is actually more difficult to paint because you don't have the flow that you really want. That's what it looks like on the one side that we did. And now we're going to turn it over and paint the other side. The larger ball has got, in my opinion, slightly better patterns to it. So I thought I would show you painting of both the balls. Similarly when you've got a wee bit to do on the other side. The medium-sized ball I'm going to just do off camera and just show you the 3 all together. So now that the paint is dry, we're going to put on the clear coat. Depending on the size that you're using, you can use a clear spray can, clear gloss, or because I do rather large quantities of things, I like to use this K&H Colour Mix acrylic lacquer. It's clear and it is quite thick, so you're going to have to thin it down with this thinner. Now the thinner you make it, the quicker it dries, but it also gives you a much thinner coat. So depending on whether you want to wait the time, you can either put 1 thick coat on. I prefer to put 3 small light coats on because it dries a lot quicker. You'll see how brilliant it turns out when you put your clear coats on. And I've got on a Lazy Susan, so I can just go round and round and just paint it on. So with the sphere you have to do it in 2 parts. Obviously the top, and then when that's dry you rotate it to do the other side. That's 1 coat which we're going to wait for that to dry. So now that's the large ball that I'm doing, because the small ball I thought was a little bit small for you to see. Once I've put the clear coat on all of them, then I will show you the results. So now all the balls have got their 3 coats on. That's the small one. That's the medium sized one. And that's the large one.